Today we're going to do an update on hypertension or high blood pressure. The first thing to know is that the numbers have changed. Well, the normal hasn't changed. Normal is still 120/80, but the point at which we treat has changed. It used to be that we would treat when someone got to 140/90 or higher. And more studies have come in and it's shown that the number that we should be treating at is 130/80. So if your blood pressure is higher than 130/80 consistently, then you need to be treated with medication for your blood pressure. Hypertension is called the silent killer, and the reason it's called the silent killer is because it's usually asymptomatic, meaning it doesn't cause any symptoms at all unless the numbers are very high, with the top number, the systolic blood pressure being at 200 or higher. Some of the reasons to treat is that hypertension and diabetes are the number one cause for renal failure or kidney failure, and that means dialysis if that occurs. So that's one of the reasons you want to treat. The other reason is over a lifetime, high blood pressures cause an increased risk of heart attack and stroke. And those are the number one killers in our country. So you really want to be sure to treat your blood pressure if it's too high. At this point with coronavirus, now we're doing much more health care at home. So this is an excellent time to get a home blood pressure monitor, and then you can monitor your blood pressure at home, take more control of your health. The thing to remember with this is that you should sit quietly for 5 minutes before you measure your blood pressure, and then take the numbers seriously and do it a couple times a week rather than all the time, because sometimes measuring it by itself makes you anxious and can increase your blood pressure.
Omron, O-M-R-O-N, is a good brand of blood pressure cuffs. We don't have any stock in the company. I'm going to talk a little bit about the two diets that are the most healthy for us: the Mediterranean diet, which we'll talk more about next week, and the DASH diet. And DASH actually stands for the Dietary Approach to Stop Hypertension, and it really focuses on lowering salt intake. We don't really recommend dieting anymore, as you Daniel Plan people know. We want you to change the way that you eat in a healthy way so that you can sustain that forever, as opposed to doing something that deprives you of foods that you love. But we're going to talk about ways to decrease sodium in your diet, which is basically the DASH diet today. And I'm going to give you a couple facts about sodium first. One being that 80% of the salt that's in our diet is already in the foods we eat. So people tell me all the time I don't add salt. But if you eat salty meats, if you eat foods out of cans, if you eat a lot of packaged foods, you're getting a lot of salt in your diet. And believe it or not, bread is the number one source of sodium salt in our diets, not because it's so high in salt, but because we eat so much of it. So the new recommendations are to try to eat as many foods that don't have packaging as possible. The more healthy foods that you prepare from scratch, you're not going to get as much sodium, but you do need to know how to look at labels. 1 teaspoon of salt has 2,325 milligrams of sodium in it. So that's a lot of sodium in 1 teaspoon, and you'll be surprised when you start looking at labels how much salt is in things. Even low-fat soups, canned vegetables, ready-to-eat cereal, sliced turkey from the local deli, things that you might think are healthy, they still have a lot of sodium in it. Some of the things you can do if you're using those foods, you might want to rinse canned foods to remove some of the sodium. You don't want to add salt when you're cooking rice or pasta or hot cereal. You want to buy foods that are labeled no salt added or sodium free, and you can use Mrs. Dash or other spices instead of salt. This is a great time to grow an herb garden. Fresh herbs are really a good way to season your foods so that they taste delicious without having to add a lot of salt. I think that's it for this week. Have anything to add?
Well, the thing I forgot to mention is that besides a low-salt diet, exercise also will lower your blood pressure. And you don't have to run a marathon. You just have to walk.
Yeah, your goal is movement at least an hour, at least 5 times a week. but you can spread that out differently, even parking farther from the grocery store and taking extra steps, taking the steps instead of the elevator. All of these things make a big difference as far as movement, like Dr. Johnson said last week. Thanks for listening. Stay safe out there. Wear your mask. We love you. Bye.